This is the BMW M340i xDrive Touring, and it's like an X3 and an M3, but for a reasonable-ish price. Let's check it out together.
This is the 7th generation of the BMW 3 Series, and I have already featured a 2-liter petrol sedan, the M3 sedan, and the M440i xDrive Coupe on this channel. The latter two have the beaver teeth radiator grills. Fortunately, the sedan and the station wagon, or Touring as BMW calls the estate version, have a more traditional front. The 7th generation 3 Series Touring carries the internal designation G21. In mid-2022, BMW announced an LCI, or Life Cycle Impulse, which is basically a facelift. The result is a minimal redesign of the bumpers, headlights, new paint colors, wheel designs, the usual, at least on the outside.
The substantial changes are inside, specifically one huge one in the form of a new infotainment system with 2 displays under a curved panel. The driver display is 12.3 inches across and the central display is 14.9 inches. The infotainment system runs the BMW OS 8, and BMW says the progressive cockpit design with BMW curved display showcases the commitment to digitization in the areas of control and operation and connectivity. Now, my first experience with the BMW OS 8 was in the iX more than a year ago, and it wasn't a particularly pleasant experience. Now, gradually, I'm getting used to the new system in the same way one eventually gets used to tight shoes, which stop giving you blisters as you kind of wear them in. Now, Volkswagen's system is much worse, but Mercedes still does it better, in my opinion. Now, what's my problem with BMW OS 8, other than the fact that many viewers seem not to like the big displays sticking out of the dashboard? Now, the displays are really not a problem compared to what's actually displayed on them. Now, for many years, BMW featured some of the most legible instruments and a kind of driver-focused cockpit. Nowadays, it's the driver who tries to focus on what's displayed on various screens. Now, I understand when you have a digital display, you may be tempted to play around with the graphics and, maybe design an ultra-modern theme or two, but wouldn't it be possible to also leave some kind of classic design? Mercedes somehow managed to incorporate a classic dashboard theme. Hell, I'd be willing to pay extra for that, whether at the ordering stage where I'm configuring the car or through the BMW App Store, whatever. Calling Munich, I'd like to spend some more money so that you give me a piece of code that looks like your classic instrument cluster. Now, let's say that once I have my classic instrument cluster, or something that looks like it, I would get over the sort of app-like infotainment system design. Now, let's leave the icons, which are smartphone-like, whatever. But, I would like to know where all the settings are hidden. I think the search engine, which, by the way, is improved since my first encounter with BMW OS 8, I think it could be further improved so that, instead of just having the official name, there would be like some kind of keywords or tags so that I could identify things like a speed assistant, whatever that is, or the engine sound composer, which is called IconicSounds. If I don't know that it's called IconicSounds, I would probably look for it in sound settings or system settings rather than drive settings. But, it's all a matter of programming, and since this car is so digital, I'm sure there will be updates from time to time. Is there like a Elon Musk at BMW whom you can tweet at with suggestions for improvements?
Enough about the BMW OS 8, the rest is pretty much the same. The door pockets are large, cup holders are decent, smartphone cubby with wireless charging is okay, storage under the armrest is shallow but surprisingly practical, the glove box is on the small side, The display is touch sensitive, but the infotainment can still be controlled by the iDrive buttons and dial. This is not at all obvious, as the iDrive knob has disappeared from BMW's smaller models. Big up for physical buttons on the steering wheel. In some of the newer models there are less of them, and for example additional settings for the adaptive cruise control or heated steering wheel are hidden somewhere on the central display. And that's a step too far in my opinion. Do you hear me, BMW? I'm willing to compromise and come to terms with OS 8, but taking away the physical steering heating button is out of the question. Driving position. There's a lot of adjustment, and with seat position memory function, Anna and I can switch easily behind the wheel. Anna's 160 centimeters tall and I'm 175 centimeters tall. Visibility is good.
Seats. BMW has decided not to publish the price lists with detailed options because apparently I'm one of the only 3 people in the world who have downloaded files like that. Hence, time and resources are better allocated elsewhere, especially with the constant lack of with the rapidly expanding individual options catalog. Consequently, I can only click through the configurator like a mere mortal and deduce that up to a certain level of equipment, BMW 3 Series simply has seats. Then come sport seats, and then there are even sportier seats. Also, I did not find an option for so-called comfort seats like you would find on the BMW 5 Series. These here are the regular sport seats, and I think that in combination with other sporty options, the car is a bit too harsh for my liking. Recently, my neighbor was considering swapping his Volvo S90 for a Mercedes E-Class or a BMW 5 Series, and the BMW seemed too harsh for him as well. Now, the dealer was having trouble finding a test car with no or minimal M add-ons. And yes, you buy a BMW because you like the driver engagement and so on, but even in the 3 Series, you have to try real hard not to end up with sport seats. And even then you have to pay extra for lumbar support adjustment, which this test car doesn't have.
Instead, there is an 8-speed Steptronic transmission as standard. BMW cut the gearshift lever short and left us with something that looks like a light switch. Whatever, there is no manual option, so this is as good as anything. How Woody Allen is that? And what about performance? Like in the 4 Series with the same engine, I also managed to beat the manufacturer's claimed acceleration figures in the M340i. The time from 0 to 100 km per hour should be 4.6 seconds. In comfort mode I achieved 4.85 seconds, but in Sport Plus mode with launch control I managed 4.5 seconds at 0 degrees Celsius and dry-ish tarmac. But even if the tarmac had been slightly damp, it wouldn't have affected the braking experience. While I remember a hard brake pedal in the M440i, the brakes on the M340i are not only soft, but also only somewhat effective. Or maybe I just accelerated too much, hence the mushy brake feel. In normal use, I did not notice this. I'm also taking into account this car has done some 5,000 kilometers in media tests.
Speaking of media tests, I'm a professional idiot who does things so that others don't have to. Now, compared to the M440i, it's definitely easier to induce oversteer in the M340i. And in general, for me, the estate is somehow more pleasant to drive. Perhaps I expected too much from the coupe and not too much from the touring. In any case, I appreciate the M340i touring much more than the M440i. The steering is precise, although a bit too light most of the time. Only in sport mode some artificial resistance can be felt, and speaking of artificial, the aforementioned amplification of the engine sound, or the so-called iconic sound, can be turned on or off. Now, is there a difference? I don't know if my microphone will pick it up, but you have a listen. I'll put the car in sport mode and click through the settings. See how wonderful this menu is? IconicSounds are off now. And now we'll put them on. Tell me if you hear the difference and how you like it.
The manufacturer promises fuel consumption under 9 liters per 100 kilometers combined. The realistic result with outside temperature around 0 and winter tires is in low 11s. For an inline-6, 374 horsepower and 500 newton-meters of torque, I'll even take 12 liters per 100 kilometers. By the way, the 6-cylinder petrol engines and all diesels are so-called mild hybrids, in which you cannot disable the stop and start system. Only in sport mode the engine will not turn off. The 48-volt mild hybrid adds 11 horsepower when accelerating rapidly, but overall the system is designed to improve efficiency.
Improved efficiency is also achieved thanks to better aerodynamic properties. This includes an almost completely sealed undercarriage or active radiator grille flaps. When the engine doesn't need extra cooling, the flaps close, improving the car's aerodynamic performance. And if diesel or petrol isn't the right choice for you, there are also plug-in hybrid variants, but these take up almost 100 liters of cargo space, so think twice before you decide.
Speaking of the boot, under normal circumstances, this one has 500 liters capacity. With the second row folded down, it's over 1500 liters. It was raining during my test drive, of course, so I noticed gutters on the sides of the boot are quite narrow and water doesn't collect in them like it does in most other hatchbacks and estates. Normally, these gutters accommodate gas struts for lifting the tailgate, but BMW has concealed the entire power tailgate mechanism with the hinges, which are just under the roof. As a result, the boot opening is very wide, at least in the lower part. However, opening isn't as high as I would like it to be because of the hinges. So, for example, I cannot open my gear case completely, which would be a deal breaker for me. It's a very specific use case scenario, but that's what I'm here for. I point out things which you may otherwise miss during a short test drive. As always, I appreciate that BMW understands what good packaging is all about. There is storage under the floor that houses the cargo cover and the net that separates the cargo area from the passenger compartment. I don't have to figure out what to do with them, they just fit. There is also a second flat storage compartment, maybe for a folding basket. The shopping hook feels exceptionally cheap and nasty. There is also a 12-volt outlet. I'm surprised there are no levers to fold the seats in the second row. And if I were configuring a 3 Series Touring, I would add the optional cargo space arrangement system. There are buttons on the tailgate to close it and a separate one to lock the car as well, and you don't have to open the entire hatch to reach something that's on the top, like maybe a jacket.
BMW may offer entry-level models like the 1 Series and the 2 Series, but premium, in my opinion, starts with the 3 Series. Listen to that pleasant door thump. This is a good sound, and I bet there is a guy somewhere in Munich whose sole job is to design the sound of the doors closing. And his job is more important than all this digitization, because premium starts with physical experience, not digital.
There is sufficient legroom and headroom in the rear, there are large door pockets, cup holders in the armrest, 2 USB-C ports. Third zone climate control is standard. Price of the BMW 3 Series Touring start at €45,000 for a 318i. This test car is the M340i xDrive Touring, which starts at €72,300. With options, this car costs about €90,000.
The BMW 3 Series Touring came to life as a personal project of a BMW employee who was looking for more practicality. Before the SUV came along, the station wagon was the practical choice, and I believe that for many people to this day, it's a good solution that combines practicality and sustainability. An estate is more efficient to make and run than an SUV. And if morning coffee doesn't do it for you, and you want to get your pulse racing on a twisty back road, you're saving 25 grand choosing an M340i over the M3. And how do you like the BMW 3 Series Touring, and which engine version suits you best? Let me know in the comment section below.
If you like my sarcastic, down-to-earth and possibly mildly amusing car reviews, join me every Friday at 3 p.m. Central European Time, and don't forget to subscribe and like this video as it helps me with the YouTube algorithm. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.